All right, so how many of you got writer's block? There's one thing called writer's block, that you don't know what to write. That's very natural, it happens. And that's why I'm very happy that most of you are writing, except I think 4 or 5 candidates. I don't know what is stopping them. But then even, it is important. I told you several times, don't try to be perfect in the beginning. In the initial phases, it is important that you're writing, no matter how inappropriate, no matter how improper that is, but you're writing. And most of your writing, that is good. Those who are not writing, they need an introspection, honestly, that why they were not capable of writing. Was it because they were not feeling like writing? If that is the case, then they need to work upon their look, because end of the day you have to write in the examination, and they will be determining the terms and conditions, not you. So considering this, it's important that you are writing. Those who are not having writer's block, as most of you are not having, I have seen some of you copying also. That's perfectly all right. I don't have any problem in that as of now, but unfortunately UPSC won't give you that opportunity. So you need to fix. But yes, at least you're writing, and this revision is going on. Now, next time onwards, we'll work on each of the things, that how to write an introduction, how to start a thought framework first, because before you start writing, it is important that you should have a thought framework. Like in this question, first thing first comes in your mind, okay, sociology and common sense. So the first question, the moment you saw question, what came in your mind? Yes, I know the subject, I can answer it. Fine. Now you have to go little in detail of the question. Question is saying, on one hand, that how sociology has a body of concepts. On the other hand, it's saying that how common sense is there, and how sociology and common sense are different from each other. Right. So in the thought framework, you first identify what is sociology and how it is different from common sense. That has to be highlighted. And then how sociology is something which is methodical, follows hypothesis, inquiry, research, and re-examination, while common sense is something which is based on intuitive knowledge, which is based on faith system. And then in conclusion also, even in such questions, in conclusion also, you should give that counter argument that though apparently it looks that they are contradictory, but there are people who have talked about that common sense is also source of hypothesis, and therefore they are complementary as well. How many of you have acknowledged this part? Because this is something which is inherent in the question. So that's what I said, कि पहले आपको question के key terms समझ में आने चाहिए कि हाँ sociology common sense 3 number तो मिल गए चलो. I scored now 3. Now what is the next level of the question? How sociology and common sense are different. But in that it is inherent, because once they are going to contrast, it is inherent. Is there any counter argument also? That's why the term explanation is there. So we'll say that apparently it is so, but on the other hand, it is also believed that sociology is something which provides hypothesis, sources of research, and validates the existing theories. And that's why it would be a little too much to say that sociology and common sense are completely contradictory. Something in the conclusion part, right? I found here that 1 or 2 had made that chart also from Sangwan. That's perfectly all right. That can be used, not a problem. That how common sense and sociology, and how sociology and common sense. It's your way, the way you represent. I prefer to write that way, sociology and common sense, contradictory and complementary. So it's up to you whether you want to make pictographic, whether you want to write in form of words. But now we'll work upon it. Now even I'm enthusiastic कि हाँ we can work on it. अभी हम marks करेंगे, उसके बाद we'll look into this also कि कैसे questions का introduction लिखते हैं. You know introduction लिखा कब जाता है? जब पूरा question सोच लिया जाता है. Then introduction start. Khushwant Singh has written very rightly in his book Love, Truth and Little Lies. The introduction of book is something which is written in the last. जब आपके पास पूरी बुक होती है तो आपको पता था क्या लिखना है इसमें. आपके पास तो पेजेस भी होते हैं, इस पेज पे चीज लिखी है which I have to highlight in introduction. So how that works, that will work gradually. Fine. So I'm happy that you have tried to. Question के तीन component थे. I hope you have attended it. What is sociology? What is common sense? Features of it. Then you have attended that how sociology is organized, based on hypothesis, research, and validation, while common sense is intuitive, based upon faith and all. And then to what extent they are complementary. अब इसके बाद the next level is that whether you have acknowledged thinkers or not. So whether you have given the names of, and how many of you talked about Andre Bete? Very important name here. I thought it should come first in mind. The moment sociology common sense, Andre Bete should come in mind first. Then how many talked about Garfinkel by any chance? Garfinkel. All right, good. So because that is something which is talking about complementary. So that's how, even you can also talk about Auguste Comte, or for that matter Durkheim, that who believed that we should not be having, because it was Durkheim. If हम जब Durkheim करेंगे, तो Durkheim had said you should not have preconceived notion coming from common senses. So that way Durkheim, Andre Bete, and Garfinkel, or Alfred Schut, whatever comes in your mind, these names must be there. At least 3-4 नाम जरूर होने चाहिए था. I have heard people talking this way also, that if it is 20 mark question, there should be 6 thinker. If there is 30 mark, 10 mark question, there should be 4 thinker. I think this is excessive generalization. Because this will compel me now to add name artificially. Now, this is what I believe, but yes, generally, once you are saying 6-7 paragraphs, 4-5 thinkers must be there, will be there naturally, if you are knowing the concept well. Yes, sir. That is why you have to write. मुझे नहीं पता आप अपनी बात कर रहे हो. Even when I have to write, obviously, that's why every time when I write, I think I wrote it different from the earlier version. Don't try to, I told you several times, don't try to over standardize it. Writing itself is an art and depends in which mood you are that time. Sometimes I'm a bit poetic, so those kind of words are coming. Sometimes I'm a bit angry on the things, so that kind of words are coming. So there's no such standard format per se. And the standard format only is on the content part. Only on the content part, right? And that's why I told you several times, this I can't say more than that, that will be unethical. But one thing I can tell you convincingly, और अगर मैं ऐसे कुछ बोल रहा हूं तो I'm saying with all responsibilities. Why I'm not quoting them, why I'm not naming them, because they happen to be insiders. So obviously दुनिया में आखिर चेक करने वाले किसी ग्रुप के ही तो होंगे कहीं से, और वो सीनियर हो गए हैं, तो अब उससे ज्यादा यहाँ बोलना ठीक नहीं है. The one thing I can tell you, there is no such guidelines which we are talking here. That's why better we should understand if you work on your content, you work on the dimensions of the question, you work on that where questions are overlapping and various demands of the question. That is where you should be focusing upon. There is no standard way of writing answer. Everyone writes in their own way. Every writer writes in their own way. Right? So, but हाँ एक चीज जरूर होनी चाहिए. Next time when you're reading an article, and if you like the article, look carefully. ऐसा क्या था उस writer? Because look, मैं भी वही गा रहा हूँ, उसी tone में गा रहा हूँ. And in fact, let's say KK is also saying in the same tone. Late KK now, Abhijit Singh is saying the same tone. The only Arjit Singh, the only difference is that finer thing which gives soul to that song, which I don't have. और वो फाइनल थिंग कब आती है जब आप लिखते हो ईमानदारी से. The moment you try to impress someone with your writing, you miss the soul. You execute the soul, if I should say. The moment you try to impress anyone, you execute the soul of your own expressions. Don't do that. Be natural. Whatever, and everyone have their own natural sense. Don't try to be anyone else. हाँ होना क्या चाहिए, कंटेंट शुड बी स्ट्रांग. एंड वो कब आएगा, वो पढ़ने से आएगा, वो रिवीजन से आएगा. That will come from the studies, that will come from the revisions, and that will come from obviously, so don't execute the soul of your own way of writing. क्योंकि because again I'll say कि ये सोचना ऐसे लिखेंगे ऐसे लिखेंगे ऐसे लिखेंगे, then your energy will be drained on that part instead of thinking question, कि what exactly question is expecting, whatever question is demanding, and so. Fine. look, I think now it's getting personal. So, and why to waste others' time? So, after the class, we can talk on these things, because obviously he's talking about that I feel this thing the moment, and what you are feeling may not be the problems with others. So, after the class, we will talk about it, that if you are having this thing of what to do and what not to do. And do not forget this, that still the highest score is 50%. Still the highest score in UPSC is 50%, and there must be something then lagging. So, ideally, how many pages should the answer spend? Abhi depend karta what is your formatting. आप छोटा लिखते हो, बड़ा लिखते हो, you are using more pictographic things, and that's why I'm saying these are peripheral things. With due respect, I don't want to say that line again and again, and so I would like to close that statement by saying this line कि लोग काम नहीं करते, काम का जिक्र करते हैं और जिक्र करने की पूरी फिक्र करते हैं. जिक्र की पूरी फिक्र है, ये करना, वो करना, पढ़ना, full stop. We want those open-minded graduates who can be trained. They should be sharp, they should be precise, that's it. इससे ज़्यादा आपसे उम्मीद भी नहीं कर रहे. They should be sharp, they should be precise, they should be knowing the priorities. Don't waste your energy on peripheral things. Ideally, it should be, if you are writing in that standard format, 2.5 to 3 pages. But it's not a hard and fast rule. It definitely not hard and fast rule. Did you notice one thing? आज जाके एग्जाम देखिएगा, ऑप्शनल में वो वर्ड्स नहीं लिखते. कुछ रीजन होगा. जीएस में वर्ड्स लिखा जाता है, आपको ये नहीं दिख रहा, छोटी छोटी चीजें, कि जो इतना ध्यान दे रहा है कि कहाँ वर्ड्स लिखना है, कहाँ नहीं लिखना है, they have something in the mind. They themselves are giving hint, but you are not listening. You are not listening. We are not listening. Let's say this way. हम अपने prejudices में इतने ज़्यादा involved हैं कि हमें वो दिख ही नहीं रहा कि why this differentiation? Why this differentiation is there? They are there to select you. तो सारे options देते हैं कि आप जैसे कर लो, ऐसे कर लो. You show your skills to me. That's it. So that's not important. I think for 20 markers, roughly 3 pages, 2.5 to 3 pages. Yes. No, in this question, because the question is more on the that how they're contradicting each other. That should be prioritized, and then you should give your counter argument. Doesn't matter, doesn't matter, doesn't matter, doesn't then even. Because question is asking first that how they're contradictory. And if you want to say they are not contradictory, they are complementary, then you have to say that it looks contradictory this way, but then they are complementary this way. Fine. Now, yes, sir. A bit, because inherently it is. When I'm comparing two things, and the statement itself is saying ki how one is data oriented and other is something which is commonsensical, you have to say that although sociology is data oriented, but hypothesis part is coming from common sense, that kind of thing. Fine. So we were talking about Karl Marx, and so far, if we take a quick look, we have discussed that what exactly is historical materialism. I hope that is clear to all of you. So in the Karl Marx, so far we have studied, अब तक जो हमने बातें कर ली हैं, please let me know whether these things are clear in your mind without any doubt. I told you Karl Marx is something which can be considered to one of the most influential names, and he was the one who pioneered that conflict perspective in social sciences, including sociology, though he was not a sociologist, but eventually what he said turned to be of significance. We have also talked about that how he was inspired by 3 major names. One was Hegel, who talked about dialectic idealism. And I hope now this term is clear to you. Idealism means what? Ideas. It is the ideas through which governs reality. So ideas govern reality. What is dialectic? There is thesis, there is antithesis, and there is synthesis. There is thesis, there is antithesis, and there is synthesis, working as another thesis, having its antithesis, moving towards ad infinitum. This is what Hegel said, and this thing was accepted. This dialectic idea was accepted by Marx, but he refuted idealism by saying it is not, ये line आपको ध्यान होनी चाहिए, it is not the consciousness of the man, rather it is not the consciousness of the man which determines the social reality, rather it is social reality which determines the consciousness. Then he was also inspired by young Hegelian, and why we are calling it young Hegelian? Because they were part of that Hegel's club at Berlin. Young Hegelian, his name was Feuerbach, who was more an anthropologist and wrote that book. वैसे anthropology से मुझे याद आया एक चीज, you should have that cutting. In paper 2 we have one topic called citizenship in India, and today Yogen Singh has written a very good article in Indian Express about this, what is called intensive revision we are having in Bihar. So it's a very good article. There are some very theoretical explanations. कुछ names भी हैं which you can quote. Like T.H. Marshall का नाम मैं भी use करूँगा when I talk about citizenship in paper 1. So how he said that, and what Yogen Singh has said, because obviously Yogen Singh is refuting the idea कि what election commission is doing is not good, and he has his own logic. खैर ये तो थोड़ा सा absurd तो मुझे भी लग रहा है the way they are talking. कितनी basic गलती कर रहे हैं. They are saying 4.8 lakh 4.8 crore people were there in 2003, and total 8 crore now is the population of Bihar, and that means 8 crore minus 5 crore, only 3 crore people have the burden, as if nobody died since 2003, as if nobody migrated since 2003. How did the female migrate after certain age? How they can miss this kind of thing? So कुछ ही छोटी छोटी चीजें जो ऐसे आर्टिकल से मिलती हैं. Wonderful article, strongly recommended. ऐसा कोई भी आर्टिकल मुझे दिखेगा जो आपके किसी भी टॉपिक से रिलेटेड है, आई विल बी रेफरिंग इट. सो पेपर 1 में तो विल टॉक लिटिल अबाउट इट, बट पेपर 2 में इसका स्कोप है अब. हालांकि आई थिंक वो तो इसी साल पूछ लेंगे मोस्ट लाइकली, बट देन इवन यू शुड हैव दिस थिंग. कुछ वहाँ पे कुछ नेम्स हैं सम एंथ्रोपोलॉजिस्ट के, एंड वहाँ पे कुछ लाइक व्हाट इज कॉल्ड सुस कंसैंगुइनस, सुस सोली, विल टॉक अबाउट इट कि हाउ द सिटीजनशिप इज गारंटीड. हालांकि अपने पॉलिटी में भी शायद इसके बारे में थोड़ा सुना, सुहा सोली, व्हाट एग्जैक्टली इट इज एंड हाउ सिटीजनशिप गारंटी. बट वंडरफुल आर्टिकल, इट्स वर्थ रीडिंग. सो ऐसे आर्टिकल्स की कटिंग आपके पास होनी चाहिए. यू शुड हैव समवेयर इन वन फाइल. जब भी ऐसा कोई आर्टिकल मिले, यू शुड हैव दैट इन फाइल एंड वंस इन अ वाइल रिवाइजिंग इट. So by the way, Feuerbach was the one who was anthropologist, and he gave that idea of what is called notion of materialism. This was very important source for Marx in that book, Essence of Christianity. And the third was obviously Adam Smith. Adam Smith said what? That were modes of subsistence. And Adam Smith also added that people enjoy working, which he said depends, not necessary condition. Modes of subsistence is something which talks about, modes of subsistence is something which says that in order to survive, they have to work. That's how you got, the inspiration. So Adam Smith and Ricardo, then Feuerbach, and then very important Hegel. I hope these 3-4 names are clear. Then Friedrich Engels is there, who is a friend. What was his approach called? Historical materialism. What is historical materialism? In other way, material conception of history. Material conception of history. What it says history must be viewed in its material concept. Giving a system view, he said, economy makes the base or infrastructure on which superstructures are built. Superstructures are built. Social superstructures are nothing but reflection of economy as infrastructure or economy as base. I hope this part is clear. So where we should focus at? We should focus at understanding material realities or what kind of economic activity is taking place, which he called as modes of production. So economic activities were called as modes of production. And when it comes to modes of production, I told you that it can be further divided into 2 factors of production leading towards forces of production. Forces of production is equal to factors of production plus labor potential. Labor potential. And factors of production consist of what? Land, labor, capital, enterprise. Here is the labor which is functional, which is there, out there. And then we have one thing called relations of production. Relations of production. And this relations of production is of two types, between men and between men and things. So I hope these parts are clear. So whenever we want to study how society is changing, where we should look at this structural view. I hope this structural view term is clear to you. It's a key word. Why we are calling structural view? Because this is how this structure is made. Economy makes the base, the kind of economic activity is taking place, and that is something reflected upon or visible upon social infrastructure, social superstructure. This part is clear. Now using this, he said society can be divided into various phases. The first mode of production, he said, primitive communism. Primitive communism, where there was no idea of surplus or private property. Let me remind you again, whenever you're writing on modes of production, visibly you have to talk about forces of production and relations of production. So in primitive communism, one line should be for forces of production and one line should be for relations of production. In forces of production, what you will highlight? You will highlight upon that what it called tools, technologies, capital, whether the capital was there, whether tools, technologies were there or not, whether the private property was there or not. So here we got thesis, antithesis as no private property, and antithesis was notion of private property. That some of them got this idea of private property, and that's how we got the next stage, what we call as ancient society, where we got, in ancient society we got masters and slaves as thesis, antithesis. This time slaves were deprived in the relations of production to a great extent, treated as animal. Treated as animal. However, masters were enjoying the factors of production. Tools and technology has witnessed certain advancement from the previous, but not much advance. Not much advance, so the gap was not very high. And then we got what is called feudal society or feudal modes of production. In the feudal modes of production, what we got? Lords and serfs. And these lords and serfs, now what is happening, relations of production is getting exploitative a bit. However, serfs were given certain kind of freedom now. Serfs were having some kind of social freedom. Technology has advanced. Land as a private property emerged strongly. Land as a private property, but capital was not that intensive, not that high. And then came the capitalist society where the capital was very intensive, and here we got bourgeoisies and proletariats. However, parallel to feudal, he also talked about Asiatic society, Asiatic modes of production. Yahan tak to he traced that how history has changed. And then he used praxis. Marx के time में ये society थी, where he was. There were bourgeoisies, there were proletariats, and that is what was going on in France, Germany, and other part of the Western Europe. Now, what is praxis? Praxis is the practical implication of the theories, where the theories and practicality, they are mutually reinforcing each other. They are two sides of the same coin, helping each other. And using that, he believed that so far, whatever the next phase was triggered by, led by the have class. This time he said the have not should come together and should try to sort out the key problem. What is the key problem? Key problem is the private property. So it's nothing but the changing notion of private property. So key problem is private property. Let's finish it. How? Through a protest, through a revolution. That's why come all the liberals who have nothing to lose. And he believed once that revolution happened, which he thought will happen, the way things were happening in France Revolution, the way it was happening in Germany, he thought a big full-fledged revolution is there. Kranti aane wali hai. There will be a full-fledged revolution. And after that revolution, those who are proletariats, they will control the resources. This is what we call as dictatorial regime of proletariat, to be called as socialist mode of production. And then once the things are equally redistributed, then we will move towards what we called as communism. This communism will be advanced communism. That's why probably he has used the term primitive communism. Here we will have latest of the technology, latest of the scientific development, but at the same time there will not be idea of private property. There will not be idea of what is called ownership, and people will be happy. They will be having symphony within them. There will be, because all the problems are what? जितने भी conflicts हैं किस वजह से? Private property की वजह से. आप अपने पास ही देखो, we all are having conflicts because of private property only. जितने भी प्रॉब्लम है, अगर लैंड सबकी प्रॉपर्टी होती, कभी एनिमल को लैंड के लिए लड़ते देखा? No, it's private property. That has created this problem. So all these kind of things is because of private property. In fact, Marx has said even the way population has grown, even that's why feminists say, what is marriage? Marriage is nothing but domestication of females. And we'll talk about what could be the reasons for it. बात सुनने में बड़ी अजीब लगती, but this is what it might be. And that's how he believed that all the miseries we are facing is because of these problems. That's how he anticipated how it's going to be. I think this much we have done. Writing part where we are, लिखा गया था हमने last. Relations of production we have written, huh? Relations of production, fine. अब यहीं पे पहले कुछ और बातें कर लेते हैं, and then we'll write. Now, at the same time, if you see that these theories were criticized also. What were the criticisms? Some of the very popular criticism is that, is Marx talking about, there's one fellow Karl Popper, he said, Marx is reducing everything to economy only. That can be called as economic reductionism. As if everything is only guided by economy. फिर तो मैं पढ़ा रहा हूं और कोई bartender है, बात तो एक ही है. If everything is actually reduced to economy, if I am doing a work and that bartender is doing the work, so फिर अंतर कहाँ है? Where is the difference? Don't you think there is something else which has been missed out? So Karl Popper says this is too much of excessive generalization, as if everything is guided by only economic things. There are other factors too which are determining. Other factors too. This is criticism of whom? Karl Popper. But इसलिए यूपीएससी ने एक दो बार क्वेश्चन पूछा, अच्छा क्वेश्चन था कि डू यू रियली थिंक मार्क्सिस्ट थ्योरी इज इकोनॉमिक रिडक्शनिज्म? आंसर इज नो. व्हाई? Because Marx himself said things are interconnected and any change anywhere will change other. Remember? So he believed that economy is changing social thing, but at the same time, whatever changes happening here have the potential to change modes of production too. Because revolution was what? A political phenomena which has led to the new modes of production. So Marx acknowledged, and that's why मैंने आपको अलग से लिखवाया है ये, क्योंकि वो अगर आप कुछ 3-4 चीजें ध्यान रहेंगी तो जो भी क्वेश्चन पूछेंगे क्रिटिकल इवैल्यूएशन पे, whenever they are asking critical evaluation of Marx, वो 4 चीजें ध्यान रखिएगा. That what Marx was thinking in the backyard. So Marx himself believed that things are interconnected, and as they're interconnected, any change anywhere will change elsewhere. So Marx was not saying economy is everything. He was saying economy is the key factor, key driver, leading towards change in others. So it's not economic determinism, it's not economic reductionism, but it is economic prioritization as factors. So ऐसा नहीं कि मार्क्स ये कह रहा था कि सब कुछ इकोनॉमिक है. Even Marx ने खुद ये बात आगे भी कही at several places that yes, there is one thing called political revolution. It was every time a revolution which has led to the change in modes of production. So revolutions lead to that kind of thing. इसीलिए आप जो भी आप देखो revolution term आगे हम इसकी बात करेंगे. मैंने आपको बताया बहुत अच्छे से syllabus design भी आपका. In your 7 topic you have topic called revolution. Then I'll talk about Theda Skipal, very big name, and she said कि revolution कुछ भी ऐसा जो order को change करे. That is called revolution. That's why you call even this AI as Industrial Revolution 4.0. So revolution is anything, not necessarily all the time military coup. So Marx was not just what is called economic reductionist. He believed that economy is something which makes the base, the infrastructure. But yes, things are interconnected, and changes in the social superstructure will also result into change in economic infrastructure, and therefore it would be wrong to say that he was completely reductionist. Making sense? So was Marx reductionist? Apparently looks yes, as Popper said, but to some extent it can be defended also. One more criticism is there, and which is natural criticism to all of them, Marx, Durkheim, up to Auguste Comte, all of them, that they are having only macro view. So isn't Marx is talking about macro view? Macro view, and Marx is not understanding. Let me give an example, and it's a very good example by Ralph Dahrendorf. What he's saying. Let's say Dahrendorf is using a very good concept. Let's understand that concept. Why this class is for? हम यहाँ साथ में क्यों हैं आज? Why we are together? For economic activity. We are here with certain objectives, set of objectives. We are here with set of objectives, and that's why we are associating for the purpose. We are coordinating for the purpose. We are coordinating for the purpose. That's why you might be tolerating my tantrums, I might be tolerating your tantrums, and the vice versa. अभी tantrum ही है कि 2 दिन से लगातार लेट आ रहा हूँ, है कि नहीं? अभी सोचा ठीक है जाने दो, माफ किया इसको, कोई बात नहीं. Why so? Because we have a bigger purpose in mind. Bigger purpose in mind, and that's why we are associating. We are associating. This is called, Dahrendorf says everything is imperatively coordinated association, ICA. When people are coming together, individuals, communities, groups, I'm introducing a term to you, very interesting term, that we all are coming together as what? ICA. That is imperatively means for the purpose we are coming, imperatively coordinated associations. हम सब ICA हैं, ICA हैं, और ICA में there will be always some people giving the orders and some people receiving the orders. कुछ लोग order दे रहे होंगे, कुछ order receive कर रहे होंगे. But if something goes wrong within one ICA, अब जैसे मान लीजिए मैं बहुत अथॉरिटेरियन हो जाऊं, मैं लेट आऊं भी और सॉरी भी ना बोलूं, तो that shows arrogance. कम से कम इतना तो बनता. That why I just did by saying tantrums and all. सॉरी सिर्फ सॉरी बोल के नहीं बोला जाता, उसके और भी तरीके होते हैं. So if you see this way, if I am getting very authoritarian, what will happen? आप सोच के देखो, मैं रोज आ रहा हूँ ऐसे, कभी मन किया क्लास लिया, कभी मन किया नहीं लिया, and these kind of things, you may retaliate. अभी पहले रैल्फ डैरेंडॉर्फ की बात सुनते हैं कि what is saying, you may retaliate. So retaliation में करोगे क्या आप? When you will retaliate, you will say कि यार टीचर चेंज कर दीजिए, ये करिए, God forbid ऐसा कुछ हो, these kind of things. तो उसके बाद 2 ऑप्शन होंगे. Either I will be toning down myself, तो बुरा मान गए, I was, so that kind of thing. Then your authority re-established, because ultimately purpose serve होना है. ऐसा नहीं होगा कि फिर कोई टीचर नहीं होगा या कोई नया अथॉरिटी आ जाएगा, यही तो होगा. So either there will be a new teacher or the older teacher will readjust the thing. But ऐसा नहीं होगा कि इस क्लास की वजह से दिल्ली की सारी क्लासेस या विजन की सारी क्लासेस या इंडिया की सारी क्लासेस will be affected. Most of the time it will be managed at local level. At local level only. तो मार्क्स ने जो सोचा कि सारा रिवोल्यूशन एक साथ हो जाएगा हर जगह, when the people will be angry anywhere, it will be sorted out locally. It will be always the problem of ICA. So taking too much of macro view is not good. जैसे कि सारे लेबर्स एक साथ इकट्ठा हो जाएंगे. एनी प्रॉब्लम विद यू, आप जाके बगल वाले क्लास को बोलिए मुझे टीचर पसंद नहीं है तो मेरे साथ झंडा उठाओ तो उठाएंगे वो, भाई तुम रहने दो मेरी क्लास है यार. सिंपल. They are not going to do that. That means the problem will be localized and be sorted out locally. So this macro view is not that good. This is what Ralph Dahrendorf said, that taking too much of macro view is not good. Actually, problems are sorted mostly within the ICA. Now, what is ICA? When people are coming together for certain purpose, and every social interaction is an ICA. So, कुछ ना कुछ objective होता है, and that's why we coordinate. That's why we coordinate. So he said, conflict is very rare thing, as Marx has thought कि there will be pan-Indian, pan-European, you can say continent revolutions. ऐसा बहुत कम होता है. कोई भी problem होती, that is often sorted locally. But I don't know why. In later writings, Ralph Dahrendorf also wrote, but if many ICAs are collapsing together, then it may happen. So शायद मार्क्स को इज्जत देने के लिए लिख दिया होगा उन्होंने कि ऐसा रिवोल्यूशन जिसकी मार्क्स बात करते हैं तब होगा जब मेनी, लेट्स से गॉड फॉरबिडन, ये प्रॉब्लम इस क्लास में भी आ रही हो, उस क्लास में भी आ रही हो, उस क्लास में भी आ रही हो, तब हो सकता है. बाहर निकले यार दिमाग खराब कर रखा, दैट काइंड ऑफ थिंग मे हैपन. बाहर निकले वो वहां के स्टूडेंट भी, अरे यार दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी के स्टूडेंट भी पता चला झंडा उठाए खड़े, नाउ यू मे ज्वाइन, कम स्टूडेंट, यू हैव नथिंग टू लूज. सो दैट्स व्हाट मे हैपन, but it is very rare thing. So taking this much of macro view of Marx is not good. Marx would have been more practically useful if he was talking about micro view. But yahan pe, if I have to defend Marx on this criticism, Marx was only referring to the general ideas. And aapko pehle bhi kaha, he was not a sociological researcher. If I have to say, he was more a political thinker. And thinkers generalize the things at nomothetic level. I hope you're getting this term, nomothetic. So just generalize the things at nomothetic level. Uske liye aap unko criticize kare, theek nahi. Because Marx was not talking about any particular thing. He said this is the nature. It may be as small as this, as big as this. So according to Marx, this conflict is something which is inherent, and modes of production will be changing this way, this way. So this way, this historical materialism is not economic reductionism. This way, you can say his theory, though yes, is macro in view, but can be defended by saying that when he was talking, he was not behaving as a researcher. So Dahrendorf said, better to understand the conflict or these kind of changes or modes of production changing is more a micro thing than a macro thing. Then a little later, even Robert Merton also highlighted that why Marx is not talking about the functional dimension of it. Even the conflict had its own function. The conflict has its own function is what said Gimmel. George Gimmel का बहुत famous quote है that conflict also has its function. Conflict क्या function है? Depend conflict है कहाँ? In fact, I often say, and I mean it, Pakistan has survived because there is Kashmir. आपको मेरी बात अजीब लगेगी. Whenever they have civil war situation, they declare a war against India and they get united. जब भी उनको लगता है बलूचिस्तान का इशू बढ़ रहा है, वो तुरंत एक वॉर डिक्लेयर करते हैं इंडिया के खिलाफ और सब इकट्ठे हो जाते हैं. If something has saved Pakistan, that is Kashmir. अभी पता नहीं आपको मेरी बात कितनी जस्टिफाइबल लग रही. So ऐसा होता है, अगर आप देखिए दो भाई लड़ रहे हैं और कोई बाहर वाला लड़ने लगे, दोनों इकट्ठे हो जाएंगे. That's why always have a common enemy on which you want to bring your people. The politics of nationalism. But your enemy should be Pakistan, not China. I told you several times. Don't do this mistake. एक वीक एनिमी आइडेंटिफाई करिए और जब भी लगे घर में मनमुटाव ज्यादा हो रहा है उससे डिक्लेयर कर दिए लड़ाई और दोनों इकट्ठे हो जाएंगे. फिर दिस इज वन ऑफ द सेफ्टी वॉल थ्योरी. इट वर्क्स. तो आपको एक कॉमन एनिमी बना के रखिए, छोटा मोटा, बहुत स्ट्रांग नहीं हो, छोटा मोटा, और जब भी लगे घर में थोड़ा कॉन्फ्लिक्ट बढ़ रहा है उसके खिलाफ वॉर, और घर पे आके बताया रहा लड़ाई हो गई, अब देखो तुम ही देखो पाओगे. वो सब अरे भैया तुमने क्या बात करी, हुए चलता हूँ, वो सब भूल गए कि अच्छा अभी हम सुबह सुबह लड़े थे. We fought on trivial issues in the morning. अब एकदम से something else will come. This is exactly what our freedom fighters did. Our differences को खत्म कर दिया कि नहीं, कि we are using differently and we are using different languages and all. We made a common enemy called British. That was the beauty of Gandhi ji, that he made a common enemy called British. और सबको इकट्ठा कर दिया. So this way, when it comes to this idea that how Marxian concept has only conflict about the conflict, not the function aspect. Merton also said that Marx should have highlighted the function part also. कि function क्या है, उसके क्या dimensions हैं, and so, which has been overlooked in a way. Even Gimmel, I told you, has popularly said that conflicts had its own function also. अच्छा, conflict का एक function और भी होता है. If conflict is not very severe, it refreshes the relationship. So फिर वो झगड़े के बाद जो एक दूसरे को मनाते हैं ना, that refreshes the things also, if not very severe. It is another function. That's why थोड़ा बहुत बीच बीच में टुनपुन होनी चाहिए, इसमें कोई गड़बड़ नहीं है. It resets the things. It resets the things also. अब इसका मतलब नहीं deliberate करें, but हाँ, if it is there in a small quantity, and that's what. So that refreshes the things. वो भी एक है कि conflict. So Zimmel ने conflict के भी दो function बताए कि this is how it's functional, and in general Marx only was highlighting on the conflict part. That is, so there are 4-5 major criticism. दो तीन आपको याद रहे. Merton आसान से याद रहेंगे क्योंकि आपके syllabus में है. Karl Popper is one of the very important because he in a way criticized Marx by saying you are leading towards economic reductionism. ऐसा नहीं है. And then we got what is called Ralph Dahrendorf, then we got what is called even Zimmel and these kind of people. So this is how we got what is historical materialism, modes of production, and how they're intertwined. Again, if the question is asked on historical materialism, you will highlight the concept, the quality part, that what is historical materialism, how economy makes the base and superstructure and these kind of things. And what are various types of modes of production, forces of production, factors of production, relations of production. And when the question is asked on modes of production, then you will get a brief introduction to it, and you will elaborate more on the quantitative value. ये फर्क समझ में आ रहा है? Historical materialism approach, तो आप explain करोगे historical materialism होता क्या है. तो एक तरह से क्वालिटेटिव बातें करोगे आपके, ये हिस्टोरिकल मेटरलिज्म है, ये इसमें मोड्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन के हिस्से होते हैं, एंड यूजिंग दिस ही सेड दीज आर मोड्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन. एंड इफ दे आस्क क्वेश्चन ऑन मोड्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन, यू विल गो क्वांटिटेटिव हिस्टोरिकल डिटेलिंग, that using historical materialism, which means this and this, he said these are the things, और इस पे आप ज़्यादा explain करोगे. So that's how one is more qualitative, one other is more quantitative. एक में historical sketching है, that how history has changed when they ask modes of production. So modes of production should be viewed in two ways. One, what is modes of production and how modes of production has changed in course of history. In course of history, तो जब क्वेश्चन मोड्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन पे आए तो ज्यादा फोकस कहाँ करेंगे, हाउ इट हैज चेंज इन कोर्स ऑफ हिस्ट्री. जब क्वेश्चन हिस्टोरिकल मेटेरियलिज्म पे आए तो आपका फोकस ज्यादा कहाँ होगा, व्हाट इज हिस्टोरिकल मेटेरियलिज्म, व्हाट इज मोड्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन, एंड अ क्विक रेफरेंस दैट हाउ ही यूज्ड इट टू टेल हाउ हिस्ट्री हैज चेंज्ड. So that's how priorities will be slightly different, making sense. So this was about modes of production and historical materialism. Before we write, हालांकि better would have been कि हम पहले लिख लेते, but there are a few terms here and there. तो मैं चाहूँगा कि अगले concept को फिर थोड़ा समझ लेते हैं, and then we'll write it the entire. I hope I'm making sense to all of you. Now the next thing which we have to discuss about Marx is called alienation. एलिनेशन. थोड़ा पहले कंसेप्ट समझ लेते हैं फिर विल राइट, क्योंकि हम इस टर्म को यूज करने वाले हैं क्रिटिसिज्म वगैरह में भी व्हाइल टॉकिंग अबाउट मोड्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन आल्सो. तो आई वांट यू टू नो दिस टर्म अ बिट एंड देन विल डू द राइटिंग पार्ट. नाउ व्हाट इज एलिनेशन? Alienation is again one of the major works of Marx in the latter part of his life, especially when he was witnessing turmoils in his personal life also. What is this alienation? Alienation simply means, it's a psychological concept that simply means sense of detachment. Sense of detachment, and when you got disgruntled, detached, that is what you call as alienation. It's a psychological concept though, but Marx used in a different context. उसको समझने से पहले एक बात और भी समझते हैं. Look, there are two things I am characterized by. एक तो मैं हूं सुनील, और एक वो सुनील एज ए टीचर, उसका सोशल स्टेटस, उसकी सोशल पोजीशनिंग. आजकल लोग, भाई साहब आप सुनील क्या करते हैं, क्या फर्क पड़ता है क्या करते हैं, हाउ डज इट मैटर? एंड इफ यू से आई एम डूइंग दिस, suddenly your status gone down. I am doing this, ooh, can I have a selfie please? Did you notice what is happening? पहला detachment कहाँ है? Where is Sunil? Sunil as something is more important. That's why बहुत अच्छी लाइन है उर्दू में, I'll translate for those who are not understanding उर्दू. ये शहर है कि कोई नुमाइश लगी हुई है कि जो भी मिलता है इश्तिहार सा मिलता है. Is it a city or an exhibition? Everyone is advertising himself. I am so and so. क्या फर्क पड़ता है? Like my favorite line is, जा दिखा दुनिया को मुझको क्या दिखाता है गुरूर, तू समंदर हो तो हो, मैं मगर प्यासा नहीं हूं. I'm least bothered. Who are you? I don't care. I don't care. When people say, I'm so, हाँ, very good, good for you. I said, आप जितने एरोगेंस से बोल रहे हो, I know कि आप मेरे किसी, हमारी आपकी बनेगी नहीं. आपका ये एरोगेंस आपको मिलने नहीं देगा मुझसे ठीक से. I was born, that was the most wonderful thing happened to me, full stop. बाकी सब उसके सबसेट हैं. What I achieved, what I did not achieve, where I am, where I'm not. But look, the way people are all the time carrying those baggages, are not they? They're always carrying all that baggages, 24/7. 24/7. अरे मैं क्लास में टीचर हूँ, क्लास के बाहर I am just a Sunil, full stop. So, क्या मतलब मुझे, मैं कैसे, why to follow those tantrums and all those protocols and all? Why should? But nahin, the way we are. So Marx is saying there is one being, and then one is social being. And social being is something which has been determined by the capitalist ethos. So my life is virtuous if I achieve something. अरे मैं हूँ इतना काफी है. That was good enough. Rest of the things were for my life, for my survival. For my survival, and suddenly you made them important than me. As if my life is virtuous only when I have those things. Isn't the portrayal is कि my life is virtuous when I have those things? आप ब्यूरोक्रेट क्यों बनना चाहते हो? बस एक अच्छी लाइफ जी सकें, या इसलिए कि आपकी लाइफ तभी मीनिंगफुल होगी जब ब्यूरोक्रेट बनोगे? If this is the case, something is wrong. So he believed, Marx believed that we are two. We are being and we are social being. हम एक तो हैं जिसमें कोई social acknowledgements, profiling नहीं है. And the second is, what is social being? And the social being is guided by what? Ethos of the society, which is based on idea of surplus. कोई आए, आप सोचो, आप कभी नोटिस किया आपने कि आप बहुत बड़े से, लेट्स से यू आर अ बिग ब्यूरोक्रेट, यू आर अ बिग पॉलिटिशियन, तो व्हाट? सो व्हाट? ऐसा तो है नहीं कि अब जो है आपके बिना मैं सर्वाइव नहीं कर पाता. एंड व्हाई यू आर बीइंग टेकन सो सीरियसली? Why had been taken so seriously? Because of that social being, social positioning. Social positioning. And this is how Marx believed that we are not our true selves anymore. We are not our true selves. That's why people lie, people manipulate. I never ask this question, to be honest. I never ask this question to anyone, what do you do for your living? My first question is, who are you? And second question, are you happy? That's it. These two things are important. And if you're not happy, whatever you are doing is not good. If it costs you peace of mind, whatever you are, it's of no use. It's a trash. लेकिन नहीं, you can't admit this thing. I don't answer either. आप क्या करते हैं भाई? I'm sorry. You're getting too personal. I'm not kidding. आपको शायद मेरी बात weird लग रही, but this is what I do. I say you're getting too personal. इतनी जरूरत है नहीं. How does it matter? अगर मैं क्या करता हूं उससे आप डिसाइड करने वाले हो मुझसे कैसे बिहेव करोगे, तो मुझे आप चाहिए ही नहीं बॉस, फुल स्टॉप. क्योंकि उस इक्वेशन पे तो बहुत सारे लोग वैसे ही मिलते हैं, हमेशा मिलते हैं, 24/7 मिलते हैं. So if this is the terms and condition, thank you. So look, what is this? This is how I save myself from alienation. This every time when I do this, I remind I'm Sunil, full stop, and that's good enough. बाकी सब सबसेट है. Rest of the things are subset. But अगर मैं कह रहा हूं और आपके दिमाग में आ रहा है, is it the voice of frustration? This is what Marx is talking about. So alienation is that concept where we got alienated from our true self. Because as an individual, we want two things in our life. We want some achievement, material achievement for survival, and we also want social security. Social security, that people are around me, they will be there when help needed and all. मैंने आपको पहले ही पूछा है कि what you like when someone like your Facebook post, that sense of social security, वो हम सबको चाहिए होती है. We want that social security. And when they are having this kind of question, are not they challenging that social security? So Marx says that as a human being, we need something for material gains, and we also need something for self-affirmation, for social security, for self-affirmation. And when we are deprived of that, results into the concept of what is called alienation. मैंने एक जगह पढ़ा था, not that popular writer, His name is Henslin. It's a book in American graduation student. They studied Henslin's Introduction to Sociology, that the term alienation was introduced by Feuerbach. I'm not very sure, क्योंकि मुझे कहीं और ऐसा नहीं दिखा, स्पेशली रिट्जर एंड, बट अगर कहीं आपको दिखे तो हो सकता है एफर्मेशन दोबारा आ गया. But Henslin has written in his book that the term alienation was used by Feuerbach. Feuerbach sounds logical also, because Feuerbach was of that type, so might have used the term alienation, but then Marx used it, and Marx said this alienation. So in the capitalist society, they are not only robbing me in material sense. उन्होंने सिर्फ मेरा लेबर ही रॉब नहीं किया है, even they have robbed my social existence also. They have robbed my social existence, and this way, he said that alienation is becoming integral part of the capitalist societies. And this alienation is in 4 ways. First, the producer has been separated from the produce. जैसे मैंने आपको पहले भी कहा, आप स्टूडेंट विजन के हो. I'm the hell who's barking. The producer has been separated from the produce. ताजमहल किसने बनवाया? ताजमहल किसने बनाया? Who knows? ताजमहल बनवाया किसने? That is more important. Who controls forces of production? Not the producer, isn't it? So ताजमहल किसने बनाया? आप कभी कहीं भी आपको लिखा मिल जाए, I might have told you earlier, कि सिर्फ एक ही बिल्डिंग मुझे पूरी दिल्ली में दिखी अब तक, which says this building is dedicated to those invisible heroes who have made this building, those laborers and others. I'm talking about the building of ICGB, International Center for Genetic Engineering Biotechnology in South Delhi. And even I was a bit surprised, रुका मैं थोड़ी देर के लिए कि मैं सही पढ़ रहा हूँ कि नहीं. अकेली बिल्डिंग अब तक मैंने देखी जहां पे it was given to laborers, isn't it? But you tell me, isn't the producer has been separated from the produce? कितना अजीब होगा ना, कितना अजीब होता है. सोचिए, मैं मारुति में काम करता हूं, मारुति की कंपनी में, पर मारुति अपने लिए खरीद नहीं सकता. I don't know how many of you could appreciate. एक राइटर है, राइटर क्या मतलब, इज अ काइंड ऑफ पोएट. अरुण जेमिनी from Haryana might be knowing. He wrote a poetry कि आम सेब बेचता है. तो वो it's a kind of satire where he is selling apples, but he cannot buy apple for his own kids. This is interesting. This is interesting. Look, when I'm teaching you, if I cannot acknowledge it, if the producer has been separated from produce, there will be degree of alienation, sense of alienation. तो शर्ट किसने बनाई? लुई फिलिप ने. लुई फिलिप ने क्या किया था? शर्ट लेबर्स ने बनाई होगी. यॉर्निंग उन्होंने की. They had worked with the machines. But look, brands के नाम आपको ध्यान आ रहा है. So where are those laborers? Don't you think they deserve some acknowledgement at least? But there is no acknowledgement at all. So producer has been separated from produce. That's the first alienation. Second alienation is producer has been separated from decisions related to production. कब बनाना है, कितनी शर्ट बनानी है, and these kind of things. अब आप कभी देखिए, किसी प्लांट में जाके देखिए, ऑटोमेशन प्लांट्स में, how they work. In fact, once I saw the report in Manesar. Manesar, we have Maruti factory. The title was, it was in Times of India, title was Gone in 50 Seconds. एक मूवी ना, Gone in 60 Seconds, कुछ ऐसा. So Gone in 50 Seconds. वो लेबर करते क्या है दिन भर? What they are doing? They stand, a car comes, they fix the tire. There are 4 laborers standing on their respective position. Car comes, they fix the tire, car moving, next car. अब तो इतनी देर में आप बोर हो गए, वो 8-10 घंटे ही काम करते हैं. Look, no acknowledgement, nothing. कब करना है, कितना करना है, कैसे करना है, all that is decided by whom? Those who are controlling the factors of production. And that's why this is where they are separated from the process of production. Process of production. Third, there is self-alienation. What is self-alienation? Again, as I told you, that you've forgotten who you are. Even I have forgotten who I am. And so if that way we had been told हम ये हैं ये हैं ये हैं ये हैं, आपको तो कि आपको पहले था कि आप इतने ज्यादा डाउटफुल अपने को लेके कि आपको डिस्टर्ब करना हो, तो मैं हमेशा कहता हूँ दिल्ली में किसी को परेशान करना है, स्टेयर एट द फेलो फॉर फ्यू मिनट फ्यू सेकेंड्स, स्माइल एंड रन अवे. वो दिन भर परेशान रहेगा कि क्या हुआ, हु वाज दैट फेलो. उसको ये दिमाग में नहीं आएगा that somebody wanted to greet me. सारी चीजें दिमाग में आ जाएंगी, सारे कैलकुलेशंस, except one thing which was the reality, that somebody was greeting me. So we are self-alienated also, and there is one thing called social alienation, I told you, where you are determined by not what you are, you're determined by your respective positioning. That's why I might have told you अभी relatives से कितने phone call आते हैं, hardly, and the moment you become IAS, look, suddenly you will be tired of receiving calls. You'll be tired of receiving calls. So this is how it works. So we got what is called social alienation is also there. Even we are not helping each other. We are more, if you see, everyone is scared of everyone now. Everyone is manipulative on everyone. Everyone, why? Because of this social alienation. So I hope this term alienation is bit clear in your mind. अब हम इसको यूज करेंगे कहां पर. Marx believed as modes of production has increased, the degree of alienation has also increased, because at each level, because of more technological advancement, alienation was more visible. When I was farmer, I'm working in an agricultural land, I'm working on that agricultural land, I see the plants growing, I had that sense of belongingness. And then I started working in factories. No such belongingness. No such belongingness. Even I got reduced to an identity. मेरी भी identity क्या है बाहर? Sociology वाले सर. Sociology वाले सर. That's my identity, isn't it? So we are being now acknowledged by whatever work we are doing, by kind of profession we are doing. So this way, as the capitalist society came, degree of alienation was very high. Marx also found this as a reason for higher violence in the retaliation in the capitalist society. अब यहाँ पर उन्होंने फिर praxis को use किया, and he believed as degree of alienation is very high in the capitalist society, you will see that violence will be more there in the revolution. So थोड़ा सा इसलिए मैंने alienation से भी आपको introduce किया. alienation पे और बातें करेंगे, इसको criticize भी करेंगे, इस पे थोड़ी और refuting भी होगी, but I wanted you to know the concept a bit ताकि हम उसको use कर पाएं while writing modes of production. Now we can write modes of production, and then we'll write further and we'll discuss more about alienation. So we have written so far that how modes of production consist of forces of production and relations of production. In the forces of production, we got factors of production, etc. And then we got what is called relations of production. Making sense? Now, you can write further that you can give heading modes of production. Modes of production. The historical sketch. Modes of production, the historical sketch. अब यहाँ पे हम how की बात ज़्यादा करेंगे. The historical sketch. Using his historical materialism, using his historical materialism, using his historical materialism, historical materialism, Marx highlighted that the entire history इस लाइन को हम फिर यूज करेंगे क्लास कॉन्फ्लिक्ट में भी. द एंटायर हिस्ट्री हैज बीन द हिस्ट्री ऑफ क्लास कॉन्फ्लिक्ट. द हिस्ट्री hitherto is the history of class conflict. The entire history has been the history of class conflicts. class conflicts with changing modes of production, with changing modes of production, with changing modes of production. He identified following major, he identified following major thresholds, following major thresholds और types जो भी लिखना चाहे, threshold slash types of modes of production across history. Across history. Across history. And this first is primitive communism. Primitive communism. Let me remind you again, कैसे करना, क्या करना है, ध्यान रखना है कि कम से कम एक लाइन जरूर फैक्टर्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन की करें और एक लाइन जरूर रिलेशंस ऑफ प्रोडक्शन की करें. You can write that during this time, the idea of private property was, the idea of private property was not there. Was not there. Working as thesis, to which notion of private property was antithesis. Making sense? To which notion of private property was antithesis. Forces of production were owned by everyone. सभी का था. Forces of production were owned by everyone. To which notion of private property worked as antithesis. The idea, the forces of production were owned by everyone. The forces of production were owned by everyone, and tools and technologies were primitive. Tools and technologies were primitive. Tools and technologies were primitive. Fine. Tools and technologies were primitive. As a synthesis to above material conditions. Thesis antithesis का synthesis हुआ ना? As a synthesis to above material conditions, the next modes of production emerged. The next modes of production emerged. इनफैक्ट इसको नेहरू ने बड़ा अच्छा लिखा है. एक बुक जो मैं हमेशा कहता हूँ, आई नो इट्स माइट साउंड चाइल्डिश एंड किडिश टू मेनी ऑफ यू, बट वन ऑफ द स्टूडेंट आई एडवाइज्ड हिम समथिंग which turned to be very useful for him. He was a kind of student जो was good in content, but writing with the same problem, trying to impress all the time. You know, so I advised him, एक काम करो तुम, you write later to someone unknown, maybe a younger kid somewhere. I got this idea because I have read a book, wonderful book, called Sophie's World. I don't know how many of you are knowing. It's a story about philosophy. A girl is there and she's raising questions. Sophie's World. So Sophie raises a few questions to an unknown and gets letters in reply. I asked him कि एक काम करो, you write later to someone unknown, the age is somewhere 8, 9, 10 years, और उसको explain करना है कि ये होता क्या है मानसून. Then you won't impress, then you explain. अभी मैं नहीं बोल सकता, थोड़ा एरोगेंट हो जाएगा. मान के चलना कि आपके कॉपी चेक करने वाले भी 8-10 साल के ही हैं, उनको समझाना है. कैसे समझाओगे? फिर आप वो हैवी वर्ड्स यूज नहीं करोगे, वो फैंसीफुल चीजें यूज नहीं करोगे. यू विल से व्हाट इज इंपॉर्टेंट, एंड एज इट्स लेटर you also have a limitation कितना लिखना है. You can't write 10 pages of letters. एकदम सबको प्रायोरिटी दिखने लगी क्या चीज ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है मानसून समझाने के लिए. गिव इट ट्राई सम टाइम फॉर अ फन, बट इट हेल्प्स, क्योंकि तब वो एक्सप्रेशन वाला एलिमेंट ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाएगा देन इंप्रेसिंग समवन. आप इंप्रेस किसको करना चाहते हो? जिसको आप जानते हो कि सुपीरियर है. वो सच में आपको वहां सेलेक्ट करने के लिए बैठे हैं. एंड दे आर, एंड लेट मी टेल यू दिस वे ऑल्सो, उन सब कॉपीज में उन्हें अपने बच्चे भी दिखते हैं, क्योंकि वो सब उसी एज ग्रुप के हैं जिनके बच्चे अब या तो एग्जाम दे रहे होंगे, देने वाले होंगे, या उस कैरियर फ्रेमिंग शेप में होते हैं. तो दे हैव दैट अफेक्शन, दैट पेरेंटल अफेक्शन, कि एक आध छोटी मोटी गलती को इग्नोर भी करते हैं एज लॉन्ग एज द एसेंस इज देयर. हाँ, एरोगेंस इज समथिंग विच नोबडी लाइक्स. अगर आप वहां पे बेमतलब का एरोगेंस दिखाओगे हमें कि अच्छा यू वांट टू शोकेस योर इंटेलेक्चुअलिज्म, तो शायद डिमांड ऑफ द क्वेश्चन है तो सब लिखिए. बट इफ यू आर जस्ट शोइंग इट फॉर शोइंग सेक, देन इट इज समथिंग which perhaps is not appreciated. This perhaps is, I'm saying, being on safer side. So कभी कभी ये भी ट्राई करना चाहिए. राइट अ लेटर टू समवन अननोन. नेहरू ने एक सीरीज ऑफ लेटर्स लिखे हैं, एंड दैट इज इन कंपाइलेशन ऑफ अ बुक, लेटर फ्रॉम अ फादर टू हिज डॉटर. वहां पे ही हैज एक्सप्लेन दिस वंडरफुली. ऐसा लगता है कि मार्क्स से काफी इंस्पायर्ड उस मोमेंट में नेहरू मुझे दिखे जब मैं उसको पढ़ रहा था. तो आई वॉज वंडरिंग कि क्या नेहरू की मजबूरी थी कि यंग को बताने के लिए इस टोन का यूज करें, बिकॉज नेहरू के कैलिबर का आदमी समझता है कि किस एज में के लोगों से कैसे बात करनी चाहिए. तो दैट माइट बी द रीजन ऑल्सो, बट वट एवर. एंड आई हैव माई पर्सनल ऑब्वियसली बायस टुवर्ड्स नेहरू, the kind of writer he was. I wonder ki, had it been a teacher or academician, it would have been excellent. The kind of capability he was having. आप Discovery of India पढ़िए तो, especially part 1, the way he has explained. मुझे इतनी अच्छी Indian philosophy का explanation कहीं नहीं मिला, which I got in those 3 pages, Discovery of India. Not even Mukherjee and all those big names we are talking in history and philosophy. The way he has explained all the 6 schools of philosophy of ancient time. अब वो सब जो है वो डिपेंड करता है. एंड मोर क्लियर यू आर, लेसर वर्ड्स यू नीड. आप जितने कंफ्यूज रहोगे उतने वर्ड्स की जरूरत होती है. जब आपको ना कहना तो इट्स नो, फुल स्टॉप. नहीं तो बहुत सारे वर्ड्स आते हैं, वो एक्चुअली मुझे यहाँ जाना है, वो मुझे ये काम है. नो इज नो, फुल स्टॉप. मोर क्लियर यू आर, यस इज यस. देखेंगे, सोचेंगे, that means you're still confused. So this way, that is what might be useful here to understand. When you're explaining someone, then you know what is priority. When you're impressing someone, you try to tell, I know this much. And many a time, you answer what best you are knowing than what has been asked. This is the problem. You answer what best you are knowing. And then you expect they should be giving you marks. Because I will be giving marks on what has been said there. So this is what the point is. Keep this in mind. And I will be repeatedly telling you this. कि बहुत ज़रूरत नहीं है. हाँ, ये है कि कंटेंट समझिए, डायमेंशन समझिए, and try to write in best possible way. क्या लिखा आपने? Next modes of production emerged, right? Next is ancient modes of production. Ancient modes of production. Ancient modes of production. In this phase, ancient modes of production. In this phase, the dichotomy of masters and slave, the dichotomy of masters and slave, या dialectic of, जो भी लिखना चाहे, dialectic of masters and slave was visible in the relations of production, was visible in relations of production. Masters and slaves were visible in relations of production, working as thesis and antithesis, working as thesis and antithesis, and the idea of private property was institutionalized. The idea of private property was institutionalized. So forces of production were privately owned. Forces of production were privately owned. Privately owned. हम यहाँ पे मार्क्स एक पॉजिटिव एक्नॉलेजमेंट भी दे रहे हैं. Forces of production were privately owned. Due to emergence of capital, privately owned, and due to emergence of capital, technological advancement started. क्योंकि कुछ लोग पैसा लगा सकते थे उसमें, रिसर्च कर सकते थे. Technological advancement started. इनफैक्ट आप पूरी एंशियंट हिस्ट्री उठा के देखोगे, वो लोग विनर रहे जिन्होंने टेक्नोलॉजी में पैसा खर्च किया. दोज इन्वेस्टेड इन टेक्नोलॉजी. दुनिया की सबसे बड़ी लड़ाइयां दो ही चीजों से जीती गई हैं: टेक्नोलॉजिकल सुप्रीमेसी एंड रिसोर्सेज सुप्रीमेसी. किसके पास रिसोर्सेज ज्यादा है, किसके पास टेक्नोलॉजी ज्यादा थी. चाहे फिर वो हिटलर हो, हिटलर ने भी क्या किया था, पोलैंड गिफ्ट ही किया था. किस लिए? ताकि उसके पास खाना आ जाए. And that's how, like, I don't know how much you're knowing about this Second World War. What Hitler did, he uses age-old technology. He offered Russia कि बॉस हम पोलैंड दे देंगे आपको, बस हमें खाना दे दो, क्योंकि उनके पास खाना उतना है नहीं, रशिया के पास बहुत सब. So आप पानीपत, you lost, why? Because of resources. The story of Troy tells that it was technology. So पूरी एंशियंट और मिडिवल हिस्ट्री आप उठा के देखोगे, एंड ऑफ द डे द वन हु हैड टेक्नोलॉजिकल सुप्रीमेसी हैज वन. द वन हु वाज हैविंग रिसोर्स सुप्रीमेसी हैज वन. वो हमेशा जीते हैं. सो दिस वे, आई डोंट नो फ्रांस इतना डिफेंस क्यों खरीद रहा है आजकल, ये पता नहीं मुझे क्या दिमाग में उनके. सडनली फ्रांस हैज, जबकि फ्रांस तो हैज बीन एपिसेंटर ऑफ डिफेंस टेक्नोलॉजीज, उनको एकदम से इतने परचेजेस की क्या जरूरत पड़ गई. So God knows what is cooking there. So I hope you are keeping an eye on these news. So this way, when it comes to modes of production in the ancient time, Marx acknowledge कर रहे हैं कि as we got capital, technological advancement happened. अब जरा ध्यान से देखिए, जितना technological advancement तेज होगा, more you will see that the importance of capital will increase, and those who are holding capital and technology will be having supremacy, and that's how the conflict will be there. So this is how we got ancient modes of production between masters and slaves. Now you can write that the synthesis between above two material conditions, so the common line सब जगह होंगी, the synthesis between above two material conditions results in the synthesis between the above two material conditions results in the next modes of production. Next is feudal modes of production. Feudal modes of production. In this you can write that during this phase, that's why yesterday we made that chart, I think you can recall that. During this phase, the thesis antithesis of relations of production, were in form of lords and serf lords and serf, lords and serf, and forces of production were witnessing, and forces of production were witnessing control over land, control over land, technology, land, technology of few, of few on the rest, on the rest. This also resulted in, this also resulted in, अब यहां से वो alienation दिख रहा है, this also resulted in increasing alienation, increasing alienation. This also resulted in increasing alienation among the serfs, among the serfs, increasing alienation among the serfs, preparing the grounds for, preparing the grounds for, preparing the grounds for violent retaliations, violent retaliations, violent retaliations. In bracket, Marx himself talked about it in bracket. For example, French Revolution. For example, French Revolution. पेरिस कम्यून भी बोलते हैं उसको. फॉर एग्जाम्पल फ्रेंच रिवोल्यूशन, वही तो था कि सर्व जो रिटेलिएट किया उन्होंने क्योंकि एंगर इकट्ठा हो गया था. The synthesis of the two resulted in, the synthesis of the two resulted in next modes of production, next modes of production known as capitalist modes of production. So next heading is capitalist modes of production. Next is capitalist modes of production. Capitalist modes of production. Marx has observed this modes of production. Marx has observed this modes of production. Marx has observed this modes of production, this modes of production in his own life, in his own life, particularly in the Western Europe, particularly in the Western Europe, in the Western Europe. During this time, the relations of productions were clearly exploitative between bourgeoisies and proletariats. Bourgeoisies, B-O-U-R-G-E-I-O-S-E, B-O-U-R-G-E-I-G-E-I-O-S. I hope it's fine if I'm sitting and, or should I go up to the board? All right, so B-O-U-R-G-E-I-O-S-E, bourgeoisie, and proletariat, P-R-O-L-E-T-R-A-I-T. इसको दो चार बार लिख लेंगे तो आ जाएगा वो. Bourgeoisies and proletariats, or the bourgeoisies means the student, proletariat means the teacher. That's how it is. So bourgeoisies and proletariats. हालांकि टीचर्स को proletariat भी कहना ठीक नहीं है. एक और टर्म होता है lumpen proletariat. वैसे lumpet word वहीं से आया होगा. Lumpen proletariat means very poor. So that's how bourgeoisies and proletariats. Bourgeoisies and proletariats or or have and have nots. Have and have nots. Those who are having control over have and have nots. These have should be in inverted comma. These have or owners. These have or owners having control on capital, technology, control on capital and technology along with other sources and in order to increase their efficiency and product and in order to increase their efficiency and profit, they are exploiting the have-nots. They are exploiting the have-nots. The alienation has increased many-fold. अभी लाइन लिख लीजिए, इसमें और बात करेंगे. एक मैं टर्म यूज करने वाला हूं that you may not be familiar with. The alienation has increased many-fold due to prominence of exchange value. Due to prominence of exchange value. ये क्या है, इस पर हम बात करेंगे अभी. Due to prominence of exchange value. तो शर्ट अच्छी है कि नहीं इससे डिसाइड नहीं करते कि शर्ट आप ऐसे थोड़ा देखते हो, आप ऐसे देखते हो. एक्सचेंज वैल्यू इज इंपॉर्टेंट. कितने की शर्ट है, ऐसे इससे मतलब नहीं है कि इज इट कंफर्टेबल और नॉट, और यू नो हाउ इट इज. So exchange value, that is becoming more important. That there is one thing called use value and there is one thing called exchange value. इस पर हम थोड़ी और बात करेंगे. This is something will be useful to understand that concept of what is called fetish of commodities or commodity fetishism. कि now we are what? We are more chasing the things in the exchange value, not in the use value. आप अपने इर्द गिर्द देखिए, बहुत सारी चीजें की कोई जरूरत नहीं है. There are several things you don't need at all. Yet you are having because of its exchange value. And that is growing importance night and day, that how people are more after this exchange value, and that is something which is creating alienation. And it's not important. You're not enjoying what you have. You are in a never-ending pursuit that also should be there, that also should be there, that also should be there, and so exchange values are more important. Most of the things in your household, they are what? They are garbage. What is garbage? Something which is not used. And tell me the use of that Roman soldier standing in your drawing room. Tell me the use of it. Any single use. And if you go to anyone's drawing room, it seems to be a set of garbage, heap of garbage. And the kids, they are scared. They should have more place to play. The kids should have more place to play in the household, in the drawing room, but they are somehow scared not to touch anything because everything is antique there, everything is expensive there, of no use at all. No use at all. Yet you are doing it. You are having those heavy chains reminding me the teethering. In fact, that's why another very, very wonderful line, and which happens to be one of the very essence of philosophy. I really don't know. In the morning, who is chasing whom? Is it the dog chasing the owner or the owner chasing the dog? Free the dog and see who is chasing whom. Who is chasing whom? Is the snake charmer is directing the snake, or the snake is directing the snake charmer? That's what Shailendra has written, Kyun Nache Sapera. One of my all-time favorite line. These three words are very magical words. You think the snake charmer is directing the snake? Better think again. is the snake which is directing to the snake charmer. Who, who is controlling whom? Very difficult. And that is what has happened in this commodity fetishism. You are guided by the goods which you had made for your own life, for your own comfort, and now they are directing you. They are directing in whether your life is virtuous or not. So this way, he believed that now alienation has increased manyfold. Has increased manyfold. Why? Because things are on exchange value. And if I don't have money to buy those things, if I don't have enough of things for the exchange purposes, my life is of no use. That's where we have seen that capital is coming in its uglier format. And that's why he believed, in fact, one of the reasons he strongly believed that higher degree of alienation would have been the reason why revolution happened or will happen. So wherever it happened in Germany or will happen anywhere, this would be the reason. So this way, when we talk about capitalist modes of production, in the forces of production, we got capital, land controlled by a few, and alienation has increased. This must be acknowledged. And in the relations of production, though, you know what you have to write. So relations of production is easy everywhere. It is no ownership to idea of private property, masters and slaves, then lords and serf, then bourgeoisies and proletariats. Then you know that how factors of production went on changing. And in the capitalist modes of production particularly, you have to highlight, you have to acknowledge the higher degree of alienation also. So that has been the nature of modes of production. Fine. So what you've written, sir? Dominance of exchange value. That's the reason why this happened. Now, according to Marx, this social equation prepares the ground for revolution, in bracket. That means the seed of its destruction, the seeds of its destructions has been shown by capitalism. Seeds of its destruction has been shown by capitalism. Right? Now, next you can write that parallel to the feudal, you can give heading if you want, Asiatic modes of production shown, SOW. So you can see that. Next heading is Asiatic modes of production. In this you can write that parallel to the feudal modes of production, Marx has acknowledged that the story is different in Asia in this time period. Where forces of production are owned by kings and peasantry work on land allocated to them, land allocated to them, allocated to them, due to centralized irrigation system. This was primarily because of centralized irrigation system and state was providing it. So Marx has acknowledged it, due to centralized irrigation system facilitated by kings. Facilitated by kings. If you want, you can write, just for information. Later on, Dipankar Gupta called it. Later on, Dipankar Gupta called it generalized mode of exploitation. Dipankar Gupta is an Indian sociologist. नाम से पता चला बंगाली बाबू हैं. So, is a generalized modes of exploitation. Generalized modes of exploitation. Mode of exploitation. So this is how we got when we talk about Asiatic modes of production. Now, in fact, whenever you're writing modes of production in your answers, I will strongly admit, and I will, let's say strongly, I'm recommending it also, that after saying these phases, somewhere visibly show the praxis, so that you give the message loud and clear that, okay, you know, this is what he has traced and this is what he has anticipated. Fine. Now you can give heading, future modes of production, future modes of production, future modes of production on the basis of praxis, in bracket, on the basis of praxis, P-R-A-X-I-S, praxis. Praxis refer to P-R-A-X-I-S, praxis refers to practical implementation of a given theory, where both theory and its application are mutually reinforcing, एक दूसरे को help कर रहे हैं, are mutually reinforcing. So there are a few questions online. I would like to acknowledge them also. Sir, can we link first assumption of Marx theory, various components of society is interconnected with functionalist approach? To some extent, yes. The question is ki, when Marx is saying things are interconnected and taking the system view, this is what functionalist also highlighted. But Marx found in this system there is inherent conflict, while functionalists found in this system there is inherent function. So let's say this classroom is a system that both Marx and functionalists are accepting. But according to Marx, there is conflict in this classroom, and according to functionalists, there are functions of this classroom. So this is where differing. But both of them believe that it is interconnected system. All right. Look, again, I'll say, I think I have said several times, but then even whenever I'm saying in Hindi, that is my moral responsibility to translate in English. Right. It's my moral responsibility, and I understand this. I don't run away from that. And I told you also that there is nothing related to the subject which you are going to miss out. So don't have that fear of missing out, what we call FOMO. But yes, sometimes I know that once you are using a few colloquial things, it makes your understanding better. That's the only reason. That's the only reason why these things are being used. But nothing, and I repeat, and I mean it, that nothing I'm saying which I'm not translating, because I know that this is something which is needed here. All right, what else? It's okay. He has not done a crime. Why are you laughing? Eh, Kya? Which part? All right, fine. So, feudal modes of production में forces of production and relations of production क्या थे? Hani is asking. In feudal modes of production, relations are in form of what? In feudal, it is lords and serf. And what are forces of production? Land as own property has come as a private property, and technology has increased because of capital now. Those who are having capital, they invested in technology, and technology started witnessing a sudden jump or the increase. So this is what we, in fact, let me tell you one thing here also. This may be useful in GS. Whenever we have capital in the hands of private people, you will see technology increases. Because as a state, as a government, as a king, your priority will be always social justice or thinking of everyone. As a private person, if you have money, your priority will be what? Working on efficiency. This is one of the biggest support in favor of privatization. Wherever you're doing privatization, the biggest thing is going to happen is technological advancements. Private bank introduced new technologies in India. Private industries, private companies came up with the new technologies and innovations in India. As AI is still private, most of the AI is private, not sovereign. You can say innovation is on the surge. So anywhere when private people will be having capital, you will see that technology is jumping there. Technology is something which is increasing there in various folds. This is what is happening in feudal modes of production. I hope that is answer to you. All right, so this is how we got, that was perhaps related to the question ki, can we use the ethno-methodological approach? Obviously, in that answer, common sense, you can use ethno-methodological approach also. So these were some of the questions. All right. Now moving ahead. At that time, largely agriculture. It was largely agriculture, and technology was gradually stepping in now. That is how Magna Carta and such like things. But largely, it was agriculture. Now next is, so we have given heading. The heading is, what was the line? Mutually reinforcing. So in the praxis, both theory and application, they are mutually reinforcing. Marx used this approach to anticipate that in future laborers can, or have-nots can come together, have-nots can come together for the revolution according to Marx. Now this line is something which is most of the people miss out while reading Marx. According to Marx, so far changes in modes of production are largely supported by largely supported by the ownership class. Ownership class once emerging as an alternative. Ownership class once emerging as an alternative. Like, just for example, so that while revising it will be easier to you, like bourgeoisies against lords. I told you that how they came, bourgeoisies or traders against lords. Bourgeoisies against lords. That's the reason why, that is the reason why, that's the reason why the notion of private property continued. The notion of private property continued. So it was fight between two people urging for private property. So lords के against ही तो traders आए थे, but they started a new class called bourgeoisies. So masters जो आए वो कहीं ना कहीं, if you see, it was against what is called, when we say, let's say lords were against masters. So every time what happened, those who were supporting or believing into private property, उन्होंने ही इसको trigger किया था. However, if it is triggered by laborers, they will try to, they means here laborers, they will try to vanish the idea of private property. यहीं पे personal human dimension marks भूल गए. They will vanish the idea of private property. They will vanish the idea of private property in following two stages. In following two stages. In two stages. First, in following two stages. First, the socialist mode of production. The socialist modes of production. Socialist modes of production. Again, I would like to ask, I hope it's making sense to all of you. Please raise your hand if you're not getting it, or how many of you are not getting it, or feeling kind of disoriented a bit. It's perfectly all right. All right. 1, 2, 3. So which part? You lost somewhere or what? Louder, huh? अच्छा, क्या कह रहे हैं? अच्छा, that's why you're. कोई नहीं. I hope you have used it better than this. वो जहां भी आप थे वो यहां से बढ़िया था. If that is there, it is acceptable, isn't it? In fact, this is what the point is. When you're missing the class and you're roaming outside, are you? Because I have seen students, पूछता हूँ क्या कर रहे हो? I'm not in the class. तो ठीक है, आप क्लास में नहीं, तो are you using it more productively? नहीं. If you are using it more productively, understandable. But if you are not using it more productively, then it's a matter of concern. So, but then even, I request you, because this might be probability with others also. That's why, one thing, try to minimize. And this is my request. I know sometimes I'm treating you like a kid, but I also know that it is our responsibility, we, your parents, because in this age, you will be very self-disciplined, difficult to imagine. That's why some kind of teethering on and off is needed. One thing, try to minimize, don't miss the class. Because sitting in class, no matter efficiency is even 40%, 30%, is bound to be way more than what if you're not sitting in the class. I really cannot understand how you can see anything in at the speed of 1.5. At 1.5, at the speed of 1.5, you see the video and you think it's done. Here I'm repeating it 4 times, then it is not done. And then you're watching it at the speed of 1.5 and it's done. This gives you just a feeling of it's done. It's not. So try to minimize it. And then when you're here, distractions are minimal. You're watching a video, suddenly something popped up and you deviated. Somebody rang the bell and you deviated. These things are bare minimum here. Bare minimum here. But that's why if it is not very urgent, this is my advice to you. Because I've seen that, being in the class itself, because once you are there, you are feeling connected. So yes, sir, if this is the case, please revise it. You might be having access to the video, and then get back to me and let me know whether it's not clear or fine. Yes, sir. What was the other's problem? All right, praxis. I told you. When we say praxis simply means that we are applying the theory for practical purposes. Whatever you're knowing, something always go down due to gravitational pull. This is theory. And that's why you are preferring something to throw downwards. It will go downward only. This is the use of that theory called praxis. So praxis is practical application of theory. That's how the term. Now you can write further. What you've written? Socialist modes of production. In this mode of production, there will be dictatorial regime. There will be dictatorial regime. There will be dictatorial regime. REGIME, dictatorial regime of proletariat. Dictatorial regime of proletariat. Proletariats. That means dictatorial regime of proletariat. That means the laborers will rule. That means the laborers will rule. Laborers will rule on the resources, and will try to ensure equal redistribution among all. Ensure equal redistribution among all. Mohan is asking who will be the next thinker. Next thinker will be Milder came after Marx, as we are following the same order. Again, he's asking so that we can come red also. No, not needed, trust me. But once I'm myself revising 3-4 times. But at least make sure once we are done, then you are done with them. So it is redistributed among all. It's redistributed among all. And after that, there will be no need of state either. State here means political arrangement. There is no need of state either. Next is communist modes of production. After equal redistribution, after redistribution, equal redistribution, there will be stateless, classless, classless society with advanced technologies, but no private ownership. No private ownership. This is where Marx believed that this rosy society will be the end of the history. But the question is, if Marx believed in dialectic, why he have not forgotten this key? This will have its own antithesis then. It should have its antithesis, and Marx is silent on that part. Okay, as if this will end here. If you are following the logic, you should have this logic that this will have its antithesis also, and maybe the story may start again. But whatever, Marx was silent here, and that's why he gave a linear explanation. Linear means from primitive communism to modern communism. That is how it will change. So that's how we got modes of production and his explanation. Now you can give heading critical evaluation. Critical evaluation. Critical evaluation. You can write that. Marxist approach of historical materialism. Marxist approach of historical materialism. Marxist approach of historical materialism. Has been widely used. Whenever you want to criticize someone, say something good word first, no? Something good has been widely used across the disciplines. But has been criticized also. In following ways. आप 1 2 3 करके लिख सकते हैं. Functionalists criticize Marx. Functionalists, those who advocate functionalism, that everything has a function and that's why it's structured. Functionalists criticized Marx for overlooking the functional aspect. Simmel, Simmel, that's the name, Simmel, Simmel. Simmel is a big name in various disciplines. Simmel highlighted that even conflict has functions. As it brings solidarity within the group. So I'm scared to give this example, but I'm trying to mutter some courage. What is happening in Gurgaon? What has happened? A father shot dead the girl. Now look what kind of dimension is given to this. Now it's altogether a different story, if you are following the news. And you know what? It happens whenever you are having conflict with other, you will feel that within your group, solidarity is increasing. and suddenly you start overlooking even the negatives. Something has happened. Now don't look it on the religious line all the time. But we are overlooking something so important just on the religious tone. So Jimel is right that even conflict had its own function, that it brings, at least if you see from the group point, intra-group solidarity means within the group solidarity has increased. So this way Jimel said, but overall functionalists say that he has overlooked. Further you can write, according to Robert Merton, second point, according to Robert Merton, Merton, Robert Merton, the Marxian perspective is viewing conflict, viewing conflict in absolute sense, though it's relative. It's varying degree of conflict that is important. Absolute sense, while it is relative. So according to Merton क्या कह रहे हैं? Merton is saying that it is always there, but when there are more cooperation and less conflict, things continue. When there are more conflict and less cooperation, things change. So actually conflict itself is not important, the degree of conflict is important. That how much is the degree of conflict. Anger is not important, the degree of anger is important. कि कितना anger का degree है, isn't it? And that's why, trust me, you never deal with anger, you deal with the degree of anger, and accordingly you have to placate how much angry the other party is, and accordingly you have to placate the parties, and that's why it in Merton we understand. Merton is saying every time there is some anger and some you can say hope, every time there is some disappear, some hope, every time there is some cooperation, some conflict. Like in this class also, there is little amount of conflict, high amount of cooperation. But for any reason, if there is more amount of conflict and less amount of cooperation, things will change. So it is not the conflict, it is the degree of conflict which is important. This is what Merton is saying. And Marx is viewing conflict in very abstract way, as if, this is what it is, always there. Conflict is inherent, but the point is the degree of the conflict which determines how much of anger and so. This will understand more when we'll talk about Robert Merton, that what is idea. Next is, third is, what you have written in Merton was the last line. It's relative, right? The third is, according to Ralph Dahrendorf, R-A-L-F, Ralph, D-A-H-R-E-N, Dahren, D-A-H-R-E-N, D-O-R-F. According to Ralph Dahrendorf, R-A-L-F, Ralph, D-A-H-R-E-N, Dahren, D-O-R-F, Dorf. According to Ralph Dahrendorf, Marx is taking very generalistic view. Marx is taking very generalistic view on conflict. On the contrary, these conflicts are often, within the ICA, that is imperatively, imperative, you understand? Imperatively coordinated associations. Imperatively coordinated associations within the ICA, or imperatively coordinated association. एज ए नोट आप लिख सकते हो अपनी जानकारी के लिए सिर्फ, an ICA is group of individuals, group of individuals coming together for a purpose, coming together for a purpose, coming together for a purpose and accordingly coordinating, coming together for the purpose and accordingly coordinating, accordingly coordinating, coordinating, right? Acha, how many of you from Tamil Nadu, by the way? Anyone from Tamil Nadu? Any? Okay. No. All right. Something was coming in my mind. That's why I thought, should I or shouldn't I? Uh, you know what? This youngsters should know. In Tamil Nadu, in 1917 and its 70s and 80s, especially there were two leaders. You know them. One was C.N. Annadurai, and obviously then we got M.G. Ramchandran. C.N. Annadurai particularly started one thing called anti-Hindi movement in Tamil Nadu. So there was time in 70s and 80s in Tamil Nadu that even Hindi was not taught in Tamil Nadu. If anyone speaking Hindu might be anyone speaking Hindi might be beaten on the streets. I'm talking about 70s, 80s, not now. That time. And various leaders like Karunanidhi ji and many others, MGR also out of maybe necessity. So MGR, Karunanidhi, they all believed this way, that there should be anti-Hindi movement, so that Tamil identity is being is something which is popularized and all. Perfectly all right. I'm not against that. This is what Rajni Kothari called it, identity politics. Sorry for this fumble. Rajni Kothari called it identity politics. They said that Hindi should not be there, and there was visible anger among the people against Hindi. But the point I would want to tell you, Karunanidhi's daughter did PhD in Hindi. Konimoji. You know why? Because Karunanidhi knew well, if you have to do the central politics, it's impossible without Hindi. And that's what I want to tell to the future bureaucrats also. Don't get carried away with these political things. I hope I'm communicating what I'm trying to communicate. Somehow we need to admit this. And this is one of the examples. I could talk about Hegde also, but I don't want to go that far. So there are several examples coming from, even recently when we got the thing coming in Karnataka, when they started talking. So again, the same thing. So a lot of things are there which you should know with what is called objectivity. Why I'm saying so? Because I have seen, I had been in those institutions and have seen that how we were fooled by these people for a fairly long time, and we thought we are fighting some kind of war. Actually, of late we realized we were just used. So as a bureaucrat, potential bureaucrat, you must understand these things a bit also. Just a line of argument, that's it. ऐसा कुछ मैंने कहा नहीं, है ना? So you should understand or think this way also at times. So this way we got, I hope you got my message. So this way we got, when we talk about this idea of what you can say, What is ICA? Imperatively coordinated association, that people are coming together with the objective, and as long as that objective is there, you can say that the thing will continue, right? So this is how we got the concept of ICA. For example, you have written classroom. What you, for example, चाहे तो example लिख सकते हैं within the ICA. So when people are coming together for the purpose, isn't it? For example, classroom. Classroom itself is an ICA. For cooperatives, anything, everything is an ICA eventually. Two friends talking is also ICA. There's always a purpose. Trust me. Purpose might be passing the time also. That's also purpose. But there's always a purpose. That is for sure. So this is how we got when we talk about how this criticism is. Although, now, एक और बात that you must remember while writing. As you have written one answer, I'm very happy, and to be honest, I'm very happy and encouraged that you wrote that answer, and we'll do it more frequently. But keep one more thing in mind. While writing answer in UPSC, in newspaper, in media, and in UPSC, both, we follow a style of writing that is called inverted pyramid of writing. Now, what is this inverted pyramid of writing? Inverted pyramid of writing says the most important thing should be said first. So what is most important should be said first, and in their decreasing importance, you should be placing the things. So next time when you're reading newspaper, you will see that the first paragraph says everything about it. That is what is introduction. We'll work on that also. Second paragraph is the most important outcome. And the last paragraph will be where meeting happened, what was the timing of the meeting, why it is done. So that if you're in hurry, just by reading first paragraph, you get the whole story, the crux of it. By reading first two paragraphs, you come to know the little of everything and the main thing or the main outcome. And if you have all time, then read the whole of it. In fact, you can compare this with radio. Anyone who has worked on radio might be knowing. You might have heard radio's news in the evening. So let's say we got 5 minutes for radio news. So you know what happens? The script is there. The script is there, and most important things are kept first. And then let's say it's 9 already. It's 9, and I have to read one more page. Before it's 9, there will be a beep sound, red color beep sound. Beep, beep, beep kind of sound will start 7-8 seconds earlier. That means now wrap it up. And I will skip the rest of the news and will come directly to the point. That now the headlines are so and so. I deliberately skipped some of the news which was there in the script, but due to lack of time, I'm not reading. So here also, in 7-8 minutes, what you have written, and if you got this idea, what is most important should be written first, then maybe something trivial can be skipped so that you can finish it in time. We'll work on it, don't worry. उस पे काम करेंगे. मैं क्यों बोल रहा था ये आपसे? Because though I am saying in the last, while writing criticism, this should be written first, because the most important criticism is the next one, which we are going to write. Now, next one is that Marxian historical materialism was also criticized. Marxian historical materialism was also criticized. Historical materialism was also criticized on the grounds of being economic reductionism, economic reductionism. According to Karl Popper, Popper, according to Karl Popper, Marx is overemphasizing economic factors Marx is overemphasizing economic factors. Economic factors. However, हम इसको थोड़ा however, this can be contested. This can be contested or defend, जो भी लिखना चाहे. This can be contested because Marx himself advocated. Because Marx himself advocated. Because Marx himself advocated that how the social superstructure, and economic infrastructure, are correlated. Economic infrastructure are correlated. And he acknowledged that how political conflicts resulted in changing modes of production. So he's not saying economy as the only factor, but taking it as a key factor. Making sense? It's not saying economy is the only factor, but taking it as a key factor. So that's how we got modes of production, historical materialism, and its criticism also. जब आप वहाँ एग्जाम में लिखेंगे तो इसको सबसे पहले लिखिएगा, इन्वर्टेड पिरामिड राइटिंग, ये सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट क्रिटिसिज्म है. बट आई सेड इट फॉर द पर्पस कि यहाँ पे फिर वो डिफेंड भी करने के लिए लिख लेंगे. So now I request you कि at home try to identify the questions of historical materialism, modes of production. And if you have that new Visal, that is good because it has traced from 1979, 1980. So see all the questions and let me know your degree of comfort. Tomorrow we'll talk a little more about alienation, as we have discussed something about it, and then what is class struggle. Most likely tomorrow we'll be done with the Marx, or maybe another half class might be required, but make sure that today you are done with the questions of historical materialism and the questions of modes of production, and try to write that question which you found the most difficult. Yes, sir. Thank you, and I hope the class was productive for you. Thank you.